So last week we talked about a lot of weapons from the repertoire of tools used by ODSTs that might make their way into Helldivers when the ODST Helldivers crossover occurs later this week. But after I made those videos, actually the day I put out the first of those two videos, but after both of them were recorded, they did put out a pretty comprehensive list of all the weapons that we would see, the Halo weapons that would make their way into Helldivers. And there is one prominent weapon that I forgot to mention. Actually, there's technically two, but there's only one that I have a good prop for. So I figured today we'll talk about the MA5C assault rifle used by the UNSC during the Human Covenant War. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, unlike the two weapons we talked about last week, the M7S caseless submachine gun and the M6C SOCOM sidearm, the MA5C was not necessarily a weapon that was exclusively used by ODSTs. The ODSTs definitely used it quite a bit, but so did every other branch of the UNSC, and it made its way into nearly every battlefield of the Human Covenant War. But because it was prominently used by UNSC forces and is making its way into Helldivers, I figured this is a good opportunity to talk a bit about the history and design of this assault rifle. Now, I want to throw a few caveats out there before we jump into this. We will be talking specifically about the C model of the MA5, which is the assault rifle that appeared in Halo 3. The one that appeared in Halo 1 is the MA5B, and the ones after that were mostly derivatives of additional letters. For example, Halo 4's was the MA5D, and the one in Reach is actually the M40, which is a similar but still completely different weapon system. We will be focusing today on the MA5C, which is the assault rifle that appears in Halo 3. So like nearly every other small arms weapon deployed by the UNSC during the Human Covenant War, the MA5C was designed and manufactured by Mizrael Armories, who, like I said, manufactured almost all of the small arms for the UNSC during the war and after the war, so that's not really surprising. Like the sidearm, the M6, it does fire a fairly large cartridge, being chambered in 7.62 by 5.1 full metal jacket ammunition, which is pretty big for an assault rifle. Starting with the most significant difference between this weapon and most modern firearms in military service is that this weapon is a bullpup weapon, meaning that the ammunition is actually loaded behind the trigger mechanism, and that gives basically a longer barrel length. The barrel can be almost the full length of the weapon as opposed to just being, the forward half of the firearm. There are, by the way, certainly standard issue military bullpups out there in the world, but they're still not the norm. So that is something worth pointing out. Forward of the magazine, which would go into a slot there, is an ammo counter. Now, this entire silver section up at the top of the rifle is actually designed to house the rifle's complex electronics that would track the amount of ammunition and some navigational data that could be displayed on a small LED screen right there. That would allow the user of the weapon to easily tell how much ammunition they still had in the rifle, and it also has a small compass for helping the user identify which direction is north and keep their orientation on the battlefield. You'll notice, that upper housing houses quite a bit of electronics. It doesn't house any sort of sights, iron sights, or mounting position for sights. And while later versions of the assault rifle did have positions and places to mount optics, that was not present on the MA5C, which relied entirely on heads-up displays used by ODSTs, Spartans, and Marines to accurately target this weapon, which is a bit of a downside. That's a really heavy reliance on electronics that can potentially fail. But the massive and impressive electronic suite for this weapon doesn't stop there, because the entire bottom half down here is really designed, well, it might look like it's designed to house like a shotgun or something like the M41 pulse rifle from Aliens. It's actually designed to house a flashlight and a few more bits of electronics to keep the weapon working in operational state. That flashlight is obviously fairly useful on the battlefield, especially in dark environments. I shouldn't really need to explain what a battlefield flashlight's used for, but to have it built into the weapon is a nice advantage, where the other weapons we talked about, the M6C and the M7S, both had flashlights attached to them after manufacturing. This one is built directly into the weapon, which is a bit more convenient. But there are some downsides to the MA5C as opposed to the other variants. For starters, it has a much smaller magazine size. The MA5C's magazine was only 32 rounds, while the MA5B could carry up to 60 of the same kind of ammunition, which is a substantial difference. It's almost half the ammunition capacity of its predecessor. Now, the trade-off is that it is far more accurate out at longer ranges. The MA5B was relatively close range and really couldn't be used beyond small, tight urban environments. It would almost be considered a submachine gun for its combat practicality, whereas something like the MA5C can be used out at medium range relatively effectively and be pretty accurate at that range. And by the way, it's firing that huge bullet, usually fully automatic, which has some substantial advantages of its own. The next big difference between the MA5C and the MA5B is its electronic suite up here. The MA5C significantly slimmed that suite down, and it substantially lessened the weight of the rifle, making it easier to carry and easier to store. A smaller weapon, after all, is just going to be easier on the troops. Furthermore, they strengthened the barrel to make it more resilient under the higher pressures of the large round that this weapon is designed to fire. But there are some things that I think are worth mentioning about this rifle that actually do strike me as a bit backwards for a future space military. And one of the biggest downsides, in my opinion, is the lack of modular options. Even modern military firearms have got a variety of different attachments and rail systems that allow you to customize that weapon for the mission at hand, and that's something that's just completely absent on the MA5C, and the MA5B for that matter. They're just not designed to have parts swapped in and out to better suit the mission that they're being sent on. Instead, it's designed to just be a wholesale, basically light machine gun, which, by the way, with a round that big and fully automatic fire, one could call this thing an LMG if they really wanted. But it's really designed to fill this sort of generic role that doesn't even really exist in modern combat anymore, so it's interesting that it made its way into Halo like this. That being said, it's a very iconic weapon system, and it still definitely has its advantages with things like the built-in flashlight and the heavier ammunition size, which does come in handy when you're fighting, giant space apes like the brutes. But at the end of the day, the MA5C is still one of the most iconic weapons from Halo. It's the image of a Halo assault rifle is just so unique and special for the franchise, so I'm really not surprised that it is also making its way into Helldivers. If you'd like to learn about some of the other weapons making their way into Helldivers, I'll leave a link up here to my video on the M6C SOCOM Automag, the silenced sidearm used by the ODSTs. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments which weapon you prefer, the MA5B or the MA5C, the one from Halo 1 or the one from Halo 3. And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Halo or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.